Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Von Gott will ich nicht lassen, which translates to, I shall not abandon God. This is a pretty interesting chorale, has a couple of tidbits that are particularly fascinating, but I think what's the most fascinating aspect about this chorale is the tonal ambiguity. At least from first glance, right? Because we have two flats in the key signature. We would expect to be in the key of G minor based on a lot of the accidentals and just the way that the piece moves harmonically. But Bach forces a C minor perspective on it. And I think this is a byproduct of the melody being composed during modal times, and key was not really as stable, whereas in Bach's time, a lot of the melodies that he composed had much more structural foundation, like a more established idea of a tonic or a focal pitch. But yeah, we have two flats in the key signature. We start on C minor, we end on C major. I reckon we're in the key of C minor. Don't let the key signature fool you, even though we do hint at G minor throughout the chorale. It's interesting. Our first cadence is actually an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of G minor, so it's interesting that he starts off in the key of C minor. So starting off with that one chord, we move to another one chord, just a rotation of the voices. Then we have B, D, G, and D. It's a 5-6 chord. We get C, C, G, and E flat. That's a C minor triad in root position. 1, 5, 6, 1 is one of Bach's most common starting progressions in all of his chorales. And then we have A natural, not A flat, A, C, F, and F. That's A major in first inversion, which is 7, 6. Apologies, it is not 7, 6. I'm already thinking in the key of G minor. It is 4, 6. And then we are moving to the key of G minor in the next measure. We have B flat, F, and D. We have 4 going to 7. In this case, it is 4, 6 going to 7 in root position in the key of C minor, and they're both major triads, which is interesting. But I think this B flat chord is also 3 in the key of G minor. A little passing tone here, 3 and 1. Actually, if we looked at this G minor, or if we looked at this G passing tone as our chord tone, G, B flat, D, this would be a root position, or a first inversion G minor triad, which would be interesting. But no, I hear it as a B flat chord. Before we move to F sharp, A, and D, which is D major in first inversion, our first inversion dominant, before we cadence on G minor. A relatively unstable cadence, 3, 5, 1. It's not unprecedented, but it happens very quickly, and he modulates via one of the weaker common chords. Okay, moving ahead, we have another interesting cadence, an imperfect authentic cadence where we have the fifth of the chord in the melody, and we're looking for a point in which we modulate back, and I have no reason to really doubt that it happens like later in the measure. I think it happens pretty much straight away. So after this G minor chord, we get E flat, G, and B. That's an E flat major triad in root position. Sorry, that's a B flat, not a B natural. And I think that we're modulating back to the key of C minor via this E flat chord, which is 3, going in via 3 chord and out via 3 chord. That's interesting. And 3 goes to A flat major, A flat, C, E flat, and C, which is a 6 chord, which is where 3 typically wants to go. Then we have F, A flat, F, and C. That's F minor in root position. That's our 4 chord. Then we have B natural, G, F, and D with this flat 9 here as a non-chord tone. It's very interesting. I think ultimately the 7th and the flat 9 are enclosing this G here in anticipation for the cadence, but this is still a G7 chord in first inversion, so 5, 6, 5. Then we get B, G, G, and D. It's another G major chord, this time with a passing 7th rather than a chordal 7th happening on the harmonic rhythm, on the beat. So we'll just change the figured bass to 6, 3. Oh, let me erase that because my 3 and my 5 look very similar. 6, 3. Before we cadence on 1, C, C, E flat, and G. And there's nothing explicitly written about the fact that imperfect authentic cadences can't have the fifth of the chord in the melody, but it's unusual in Bach's music and you only see it rarely. So we have 2 in relatively weak cadences, and I think it's a byproduct of this melody being C minor, G minor, sort of adjacent to one another. And they are nearby keys, so using them interchangeably is really the difference between A and A flat. Alright, moving ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of E flat major, and I don't think we modulate straight away. It still sounds like C minor for a while afterwards. We have C, E flat, C, and G. That's just another tonic triad. A flat, F, C, and F. That's F minor in first inversion, so 4-6. Then we get F, A flat, C, and E flat, which is another F minor chord, this time F minor 7 in root position, so we'll just change that to a 7. And I think this is where we start to modulate. This is just where it sounds like it's modulating to me to the key of E flat. I don't know why, it's just, if you listen to the chorale, this is where it happens. I guess you could say it modulates here as well, but this is particularly where it starts to modulate for me. So E flat, this F minor 7 chord would be 2-7 in root position. We then have B flat, G, B flat, and E flat. That's E flat major in second inversion, so 1-6-4. Then we have B flat, F, B flat, and D. It's a B flat major triad in root position. That's a 5 chord. A little cadential 1-6-4 figure here. And then we have E flat major, E flat, G, B flat, and E flat, our tonic triad. Okay, looking ahead, we have an interesting cadence next. I'm calling it a half cadence in the key of E flat major, but it also has imperfect authentic cadence qualities in the key of B flat major, so we'll take a look at it when we get there. Here we have B flat, F, B flat, and D. That's another B flat major chord in root position, just the bass leaping up an octave from the previous iteration. We then have E flat, G, E flat, B flat, and E flat. That's another tonic triad, E flat major, but this time in first inversion. Before we get F, E flat, A flat, and F. However, I think this E flat is a 7-6 suspension over the bass, and it's actually D flat, F, and A flat, or not D flat, apologies, D natural, and that would be our leading tone chord in the key of E flat major, so D diminished in first inversion. And then we go to E flat, B flat, and G. So we have an interesting thing here. It's not a linear or a stepwise suspension. It's like a 7-5 suspension, which is kind of unusual. I don't think this D is a chord tone. I think this is just a root position tonic triad with this 7th suspended over it. Bach does a lot of suspension figures involving the 7. Most commonly the 7, but sometimes we see 4 as well. And then we get C, E flat, C, and G with the passing 7th in the alto. This is just a root position 6 chord, C minor. Then we get F, E flat, A natural, and F. This is an incomplete F7 chord, but still, that would be the dominant of our dominant, B flat major. Neighbor tone in the alto. Then we get a little bit of a accented non-chord tone here, F, C, A flat, and F. So I think the quality of the chord here just changes to root position without the 7th, and then we cadence on 5. B flat major, B flat, F, and D. However, if you were to analyze this in the key of B flat, as if you heard it as a modulation, this C minor chord would be 2, this F7 chord would be 5-7, and the figured bass change would be the same. And then we would cadence on 1, not 5. But it doesn't sound like the tonic has changed here to me, so I don't think this is an imperfect authentic cadence. It just kind of looks like one. So if you hear it that way, then there's the analysis for you if you are hearing it as an imperfect authentic cadence. But looking ahead to the next cadence, this is the most interesting cadence in the chorale, and it's probably the most interesting cadence we've looked at for a while. It has imperfect authentic qualities, but I think it's a deceptive cadence. Sorry, I underlined it because that's what I was talking about. I think it's actually a deceptive cadence in the key of E flat major. So I don't think we've modulated, even though it sounds unusual, but we'll talk about it in both contexts. So we start things off with a B flat major chord again, B flat, F, B flat, and D. No need to reanalyze. Then we have G, E flat, B, and E flat. It's a 1-6 chord. It's pretty common for 5 to go to 1-6. Then we get E flat, B, G, and D. This passing tone here, it's definitely a tonic triad in root position, but it's also a 7 chord, which is kind of interesting. So I think the melody just has this passing tone, and he keeps the structural, the same structure underneath it. So we have 2 E flat major triads here. The voices are just rotated. And actually, I was about to say that we had parallel fifths, but no, he had the chord inverted here, so they are parallel thirds. Apologies for going off track there. But yeah, we have a 1-6 chord followed by a 1-7 chord. It's literally a 1-7 chord, but I think this is just a passing tone over another E flat triad. And then we get A flat, C, E flat, and C, which is A flat major in root position. That's a 4 chord. Passing tone in the tenor before we get G, E flat, A flat, and C, which is another 7 chord, but this time the 7th's on the bass. It's an A flat major chord in third inversion. That's 4-4-2, very unusual, and we would expect that to go to, interestingly, the next chord, 7-6, F, F, A flat, and D. So I think this G is just this G technically would be it would be like a 10-9 suspension, so I think this is just a weird figure, but I do think this is a 7-6 chord, and this G is just a neighbor tone, not the chord tone that's being resolved to. But then we have this interesting false relation, A flat to A natural, F sharp, E flat, A natural, and C. That is F sharp fully diminished 7th, which is the leading tone chord to G minor, which is our next chord, G minor, G, D, G, and B flat. It's our 3 chord. So we have 7 of 7 of 3 going to 3, and that's how I hear it. It sounds like a deceptive cadence to me, like it's going to a non-tonic function, or a tonic functioning chord that isn't the tonic of the key. However, if you hear this in the key of G minor, I would say that honestly, there's really no elegant way of analyzing this. We have F natural, so there's no leading tone yet. There's A flat, it's very unusual. It'd be like some type of modal chord. It'd be like a 5 diminished chord, and that would be the dominant in the key of, or not in the key necessarily, but that would be the literal harmonization of the chord in G Phrygian, right? Because we have D, which is in the scale, F, which is in the scale, and A flat, which is in the scale. So in the Phrygian mode, the 5 chords diminished, but I think this is more of like a interesting play with adjacent, that's not a 3 chord, that's a 1 chord, adjacent diminished harmonies. It's very unusual. It's one of the, it's a contender for one of the most unusual progressions that I've seen so far. We have adjacent diminished chords and unresolved diminished chord. All things considered, though, the fact that 7 goes to 3 is more of a byproduct of, I would say, like a deceptive progression. But all things considered, G minor and E flat are pretty close to one another, but it does not sound like we've modulated to me. A flats are just too close in proximity, and even though we get the leading tone in there, it just doesn't do enough. It mostly just tonicizes the chord from my perspective. All right, moving ahead, we have we end with a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C minor, but I don't think we modulate straight away. I think we wait a little bit. Here we have D, B flat, F, and A flat. That's B flat 7 over D, which is 5-6-5, and that goes where we expect, 1 in root position, E, B flat, or E flat, B flat, E flat, and G, and this is where I think we modulate. I think we modulate via another 3 chord in the key of C minor. E flat is the mediant. We then go A flat, C, F, and C, which is an F minor triad in first inversion. We can call that a 4 chord, or actually, you know what? I would be tempted to call that a 4 chord, and I think that that's fine, but we could also call it D, A flat. Oh no, I am going to call it a 4 chord in root position. I was tempted to call it a 2 chord as well. Maybe it is a 2-4-3 chord. D minor 7 flat 5 over A flat, but it's probably more likely to be a 4-6 chord, to be honest. 3 wants to go to 6, and that's what it's doing in the bass. Just the chord that's harmonized above it is not a 6 chord, it's a 4 chord. And that's fine. Here we get G, E flat, G, and C. That is C minor in second inversion, so another 6-4 chord. Passing tone, or a little brief passing figure in the tenor before we get another chord tone. G, D, G, and B natural, the leading tone in the melody this time, which is very interesting. It's a G major triad root position, repeated tone here, and then we get E natural afterwards. C, E natural, G, and C, which is our major tonic. I put the bracket in there as well for those of you who use the bracket to signify the 1, 6, 4 and the 5 being a couple. And that is today's analysis. Super interesting chorale, actually, after talking it out. Seeing the chords that are being used to modulate, I feel like the modulations in this chorale are very spur of the moment and not very established. Like, it's kind of interesting that they modulate so quickly and over chords that aren't the most stable, or at least the chords that aren't the likely culprits to be the ones that would be modulated with. Maybe I'm making that up, but just based on my analysis that I've done so far, it just doesn't seem like something that would likely happen, like modulating over 3 a bunch. The fact that he does it a ton and uses that E flat and that B flat as sort of a modulation axis for both keys is interesting, using the relative major in both keys. But the duality of G minor and C minor, it's interesting. I think there's a little bit more to uncover there that's beyond the scope of this video, but the idea of the transposed mode and the idea of the modal traditions still, or modal conventions still making themselves known in music of the Common Practice period. So Bach definitely wrote some enigmatic music, that's for sure, especially progressions around here. Most of the time, the justification, the only justification you really need is the fact that Bach was thinking about voice leading, and Bach was thinking about writing, emotional music. There was probably metaphor or some type of like numerology. There was probably something that led him to write progressions that aren't just cut and dry, straightforward progressions, because he could harmonize a melody straightforwardly, but that's not the mark of a master artisan like Bach was. But regardless, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I upload a video every single day. I'm currently working on the Bach chorales. I'm 125 deep now, so I have another 300 or so to analyze, so I'm going to be in here for the long haul. I'm going to be working on this playlist for at least until around this time next year. So if you want to go on that journey with me, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to hit the notification icon so you get notified when I upload, like I said, once a day. And thank you again for watching. I hope you take care.